This video is brought to you by Uppbeat. More about them later in the video. So this is the iPhone XR and this is the iPhone 11. But which one is the right one for you in 2021? Well, let's find out. Okay, so let's start with the design. Now, to be honest with you, the iPhone XR and 11 are both very similar from the outside. I think both phones have a really nice design. Both are built very well with glass on both sides. Both phones also have an aluminum frame, which is not as durable as stainless steel, but I think it looks and feels premium. Really, the only visual difference between these two phones is the camera bump. Other than that, both phones are identical. But there is another difference. You just can't see it. So although both phones are water and dust resistant, the iPhone 11 is IP68 water resistant and the iPhone XR is IP67 water resistant. It's a small difference, but one that I think is worth mentioning. Overall, in my opinion, the iPhone XR and 11 both feel like solid, premium, and well-built phones. So I would give both phones a 7.5 out of 10 for the design. Now, if you take a look at the screens of both phones, I think we can agree that both look exactly the same, and it's because they are. But that's not a good or a bad thing, because the screen on the iPhone XR is thankfully not worse than the one on the 11, but the screen on the iPhone 11 is not really the best of the best. Both phones have a 6.1-inch LCD screen with a resolution that's slightly higher than 720p. So if you just look at the numbers, they can't really be considered good screens. However, I've said this before and I'm gonna say it again. If you actually use these phones in real life, you'll immediately realize that these screens are not as bad as they seem. Their viewing angles are not terrible. They've got a good amount of contrast. They look fairly color accurate and sharp. Both get plenty bright, so using both phones outdoors shouldn't be a problem. And they also get dark enough to be comfortably used at night. So at least for an average user, the screen on the iPhone XR and the 11 is good enough. So I would give both phones a 7 out of 10 for the screens. Like I said, they're not bad screens, but they're still not as good as an OLED screen. However, when it comes to performance, things get a little weird or confusing, I guess. Because in theory, the iPhone 11 equipped with the A13 Bionic processor is supposed to be more powerful, faster, and just better than the XR running the A12 Bionic processor. But I don't really notice a difference. I'm not saying the iPhone 11 is not more powerful, faster, and all of that. I'm just saying that the difference is not noticeable when separately using these phones, which I think is a good thing because both phones do not feel slow. They both have zero problems performing everyday tasks such as calling, texting, browsing, watching YouTube, and things like that. Both the iPhone 11 and the XR also perform very well during gaming. I played a few games including Call of Duty, which I think is a graphically intensive game, and both phones handled pretty much everything perfectly. There were no frame drops, no lag, no nothing. So I don't think I would be wrong if I say, unless you're going to be doing highly intensive tasks on your phone, you won't really be able to utilize the full power of the A13 Bionic. Therefore, the iPhone XR and obviously the 11 too should be more than enough for pretty much everyone in terms of performance. However, the iPhone 11 does have an extra gig of RAM, so if you use both phones side by side, you might notice the iPhone XR having a hard time keeping as many apps open in the background as the iPhone 11. So 8 out of 10 for the iPhone XR and 8.5 for the iPhone 11. Now, just before I talk about the battery life on both phones, I want to tell you about the YubiKey from Uppbeat. So a YubiKey is a physical security key for your online world, acting as an extra layer of protection for your accounts beyond a username and password. The YubiKey sets the standard for simple and secure login and is the strongest form of two-factor authentication you can use. This is the best method to protect against phishing and man-in-the-middle attacks. According to a recent Google study, a physical security key like this is proven to prevent phishing-related account takeovers 100% of the time. It's also very easy to use. Just one touch or tap of the key is all that's needed to log in, and it works with all your favorite services including Facebook, Google, Apple, Twitter, Microsoft, YouTube, and hundreds more. Plus, you can take this anywhere with you just like you take your car or house keys because it's water and crush resistant, which makes it very durable. So if you're serious about protecting your online world, I genuinely think a key like this is a must-have. Interested? Check it out using the first link in the description and use coupon code YubiKeySave5 to get $5 off your purchase. Now, let's talk about the battery life on both phones. So the iPhone 11 has a 3110 mAh battery and the iPhone XR has a 2942 mAh battery. The iPhone 11 does have a physically larger battery, so you might think the iPhone 11 has better battery life. And although that is somewhat true, the iPhone XR doesn't have a terrible battery life. In fact, I think both phones have amazing battery life. The iPhone XR or the 11 should get you through your day on a single charge. Because both phones have fairly low resolution screens, the processor has to process fewer pixels, therefore it consumes less power. And the iPhone 11 has slightly better battery life than the XR because 1, it has a physically larger battery, and 2, the A13 Bionic processor is more efficient than the A12 Bionic processor. So in the battery department, there are a few advantages for going with the iPhone 11 over the XR, and that is why I would give an 8 out of 10 to the iPhone XR and an 8.5 to the iPhone 11 for the battery life. Okay, finally, let's take a look at the cameras. So the iPhone 11 has 3 12 megapixel cameras, a standard wide-angle camera, an ultra-wide-angle camera, and a selfie camera. The iPhone XR has 2 cameras, a 7 megapixel selfie camera, and a standard 12 megapixel wide-angle camera. The cameras in the iPhone 11 are the exact same cameras you'll find in the iPhone 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max. The iPhone XR, on the other hand, is using the same cameras you'll find in the iPhone XS and XS Max, which is great. Both of these phones are using the same cameras as their bigger and better brothers. Now, I think the photos and videos from both phones look really nice. Both can shoot in 4K at 60 frames per second and 1080p at 240 frames per second. However, neither of them have a telephoto camera, which in my personal opinion is not really a big deal because most times you can achieve similar results by digitally cropping in. Now, the iPhone 11 also has night mode, which by the way works very well, but the iPhone XR doesn't. And like I said in my iPhone XR video, this is definitely a downside of this phone, especially now in 2021. However, you can probably get around that by using a third-party app, but I don't think you'll find one that's free. I haven't checked though. The selfie cameras on both phones are also very good, and they should be just fine for taking selfies, video calls, and pretty much everything you would use a selfie camera for. So in conclusion, I think both phones are great, but there's no doubt that the iPhone 11 is better than the iPhone XR in pretty much every department, except the price. The iPhone XR is a few $100s cheaper. So although I don't have any problem recommending both phones, I will say that if the iPhone 11 is within your budget, definitely go for this over the iPhone XR. But if it's not, the iPhone XR is not a bad phone even in 2021. So there you have it. That's all for this video. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you later.